Very good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at this press conference with the President of the Human Rights Council, Federico Villegas of Argentina. This is a press conference, once again, it's that time of the year where we do this press conference ahead of the upcoming session of the Human Rights Council, this being the 51st session, which commences on Monday. It lasts for 4 weeks from the 12th of September to the 7th of October. I just wanted to draw your attention to the email I shared with you about an hour ago, documents which include the program of work, which is still a bit of a moving target, the program of work for the month-long session. There's also a list of draft resolutions that have been announced at an organizational meeting on the 30th of August, along with the usual A to Z guide, which is sort of a user-friendly version of the annotated agenda, if you will. So those documents are in your email. So again, I wanted to thank you for joining us. I'll turn right over to Ambassador Villegas for your remarks and then to you for your questions. Ambassador.
Thank you, Rolando. Good afternoon to everybody. And it's always a pleasure to meet with you. As I always say, journalists, the press are partners in the work of the Human Rights Council. So for us, it's a very important meeting always before each session. As Rolando said, the session will run for 4 weeks from 12 September to 7th October, another extremely busy session that reflects the increasing workload of the Council, growing number of mandates, and if you look at the different list of resolutions that are going around, we never know how many of those will be finally tabled, but they are under discussion. It's quite a high number, over 45 resolutions just being discussed. It will be hybrid, although the majority of participants will be in person in room 20, but hybrid modality has shown that it's very useful for the work of the Council, so we continue with that. We will have more than 80 reports and a dozen oral updates, around 30 country situations, over 40 thematic human rights issues, some 20 special procedures mandate holders. Independent experts will give their reports, 3 commissions of inquiry, and 4 other investigative mechanisms. We will have the Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia that will present the first written report to the Council on September 22nd. It was set up December last year after a special session, and is conducting an investigation into allegations of human rights and humanitarian law violations in Ethiopia committed since 3rd November 2020 by all parties to the conflict. And one of the first roles I had as president was to appoint that commission of inquiry. The Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine, of course, presents its first oral update to the Council on September 23rd. It was set up, as you know, on March 4th after an urgent debate at the 49th session of the Human Rights Council in March this year, just days after the conflict in Ukraine began. I subsequently appointed the 3 members of that commission on March 30th before that session concluded. And the commission also delivered a preliminary update last May at the Council's special session on Ukraine, and is chaired, as you know, by Eric Mose, former judge of the European Court of Human Rights and former president of the International Criminal Tribunal of Rwanda. Then the Commission of Inquiry on Syria also will make a report to the Council on September 22nd. Sadly, this is the 27th report in more than 11 years of this mandate. Other investigative mechanisms that will present reports this session also are the independent mechanism for Myanmar, the first day of the Council on September 12th, the independent fact-finding mission on Venezuela on September 26th will present the report. This is the 3rd report of this fact-finding mission since it was set up in September 2019. The independent expert mechanism to advance racial justice and equality in law enforcement will present a report for the first time on October Third, remember this mechanism was created after the George Floyd case and the special urgent debate we had on that. And then the team of international experts on the Democratic Republic of the Congo will be the first report to the Council since their mandate was expanded to cover the entire country. Originally, this mandate was covering only one region, Kasai region, and it was extended to cover the whole country. And the acting High Commissioner, Nada Al-Nashif, will present a global update on the first day of the Council, September 12th. She will address the human rights situations in multiple countries around the globe, as usual. These include reports and updates on Sri Lanka, Nicaragua, Myanmar, Belarus, the DRC, South Sudan, Cambodia, Georgia, Yemen, the Philippines, and Ukraine. She will also present several reports throughout the session into various human rights dimensions, for example, on the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on human rights. The September session is also an opportunity for the Council to consider the annual report of the Secretary General, very important report, the annual report of the Secretary General on reprisals against those who cooperate with the UN human rights bodies. And that will be on September 29th. We will have 5 panel discussions, very interesting issues, all of them: right to development, gender-based barriers to freedom of opinion, climate change and right to work, indigenous peoples with a focus on socioeconomic recovery in the COVID context, and the impact of colonialism on human rights. Full details of the speakers and panels can be found at the HRC51 website. Among the country experts presenting this session are the special rapporteurs on Afghanistan, Burundi, Cambodia, Central African Republic, Myanmar, and Somalia. And 13 rapporteurs and working groups on human rights themes will present reports. Their mandates cover cross-cutting themes such as truth and justice, indigenous people, the right to development, toxic waste, unilateral coercive measures, sanctions, modern slavery, water and sanitation, older persons, arbitrary detention, international order, enforced disappearances, mercenaries, people of African descent. And as I told you, several draft resolutions going around. We don't know how many will be tabled at the end. And the provisional, as a last comment, the provisional program of work, like Rolando said, is on the webpage. And I invite you to use this tool that we always use, which is the A to Z guide for the next session, where you find all the information to guide you through the session to cover the council. And of course, we will actively, as we always do, tweet once the session starts every day on what's happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And maybe I'll just add that among there are various experts that have approached us that who will be doing press conferences throughout the course of the 4 weeks. We only have one that has been announced thus far, and that is pertaining to Afghanistan. The Special Rapporteur on Afghanistan will hold a press conference in this room in person. Richard Bennett will be here at 9:30 a.m. this Friday. I should point out that his report was just made public, so he'll be here to speak to that, and he's actually presenting to the council on the opening day on Monday the 12th. Again, several others will be scheduled, and my colleagues, Matt Pascal and I, will be sharing those details with you as they become available. So over to you for your questions. Yes, Isabel from FA.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. I would like to have your comment on how likely is to see a debate on the report by the High Commissioner of Human Rights on the situation of Uyghur minority in China. Even it's not on the agenda. I know that it has not mandated by the Council, but it's a very important human rights issue. So what we can expect on that? Thank you.
Yes, well, like you say, this is not a report mandated by the Human Rights Council. It's the prerogative of under the functions and responsibilities of the office. And this is a multilateral democratic body, and it's state-driven, and it's up to member states to decide which opportunity and which are the tools they want to, how they want to address this. But in principle, we have the High Commission, the acting High Commissioner, in the general debate under item 2 on 13 and 14 September. She has an oral update on the wider perspective of everything that the office does.
Thank you. I just pointed out it's 12 and 13, actually, Monday and Tuesday. Sorry. So the presentation of the High Commissioner is on Monday morning, and then the ensuing debate on her presentation will be on the Tuesday, separated. We'll turn now to Gabriela of El Proceso. Gabriela, if we can unmute. Go ahead, Gabby.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Gabriela Sotomayor, Mexico. One question, I have heard that you are a strong candidate for being for High Commissioner for Human Rights. Can you comment on that? What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you. I refrain from answering that question. It's a confidential process, and it's a decision by the Secretary General. But since you asked that, I would like to take the opportunity to pay tribute to the former High Commissioner, Michelle Bachelet, that I worked with her these 8 months, and it was a very close cooperation in all issues. So I have no comment on your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurent Sierra, Swiss News Agency, if we can unmute Laurent. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Rolando, and thank you, Ambassador, for the press conference. That was quite a similar question, but let me rephrase it through hypothesis and to focus on the Human Rights Council. In the case where president of the Human Rights Council would be a candidate for that position and would have to chair a session with an acting High Commissioner next to him, in a period such this one with high tensions around Ukraine and the report on China, would there be any kind of problem to fulfill the mission as president of Human Rights Council in that kind of framework? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. What I can tell you is that I'm very concentrated on the 51st session, which is my responsibility. And that's why I'm here for the 3rd time with all of you. And this is my responsibility. And in relation to your hypothesis, I repeat what I just said. It's a confidential process. I have no comment. It's a Secretary General's decision. But the 51st session, of course, is going to be a challenging session because human rights challenges are, as I say, 365 days a year, 24/7 hours. And this is the main multilateral body created by the international community to address human rights situations all over the world. So this session is going to be challenging like any other, and I'm ready for it with all my team and to work these 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Nina Larson from AFP. Go ahead, Nina.
Thank you for taking my question. First, I wanted to ask about if any of the resolutions that you've heard about, if there are any rumblings about a resolution on a special rapporteur for Russia, and what the discussions are like on that. And then just to follow up on my colleague's questions, I'm not going to ask you about your candidacy, but perhaps you have some insight into the timeline of when we could expect a decision on the next High Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no information of any proposal, resolution, or idea on what you just mentioned of a special rapporteur or possible special rapporteur on Russia. I had no information. But again, it's state-driven. Until September 28th, all states have the possibility to put a draft resolution to be negotiated. So we will have to wait to see what happens. But on that specific question, I have no information. And sorry, the second part, sorry. Oh, the timeline. No, of course, I have no comment on that. This is the Secretary General's decision. We are here in Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Maybe just I'll take this opportunity to your questions on potential resolutions. We will, throughout the course of the session, we will be sharing with you the usual media updates, which include links to all the meetings taking place in parallel, including the informal consultations on various resolutions. So we will be sharing those with you, those links to those meetings. They will be taking place in person. It's a hybrid meetings. They're generally public. So once we have information about additional draft resolutions, in addition to those which we've shared with you, we will certainly make sure you have that at your disposal. Gabby, you have a follow-up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Rolando. It's another question. Are we expecting press conference of the special rapporteur on freedom of expression? Is there anything or not? I mean, that's the only question. Thank you.
Okay, I can answer that one if you don't. Gabby, in fact, the rapporteur, Irene Khan, presented at the June session. She's not actually scheduled to present. And nevertheless, if you look at this little booklet here, there is an item on, there is an annual discussion on freedom of opinion and expression, which will also touch upon the gender perspective throughout the work of the council. It's a focus on freedom of expression and opinion. So the subject itself is commonly referred to, but the rapporteur will not be here, and we have no specific press conferences on this subject that is scheduled for this session. Yes, absolutely, Ambassador.
Just two comments. First, I forgot to mention at the beginning that I'm happy as president to have this last session with side events back in the Palais. It's something that we haven't had for the last 2 years. Not as many as we could because there are not enough rooms and facilities as we used to, but that's an important new feature of this session, and NGOs and states are very happy to be able to have side events. We have to remember that those side events are very important for thought-provoking and discussing freely issues that are in the council. And on freedom of expression, I would like to share that it's an issue very important that is in every session present in different formats. And I just to inform you that we just had this Monday a very historic event because for the first time UNESCO and the Human Rights Council had a special informal session on freedom of expression and protection of journalists. And the president of the General Conference of UNESCO came to Geneva, and we had a very, very interesting debate on the challenges for journalists and freedom of expression in current times. So it is an ongoing issue that is in the attention always of the Council.
Thank you very much for emphasizing that, Ambassador. And I'm sure you also share our delight to know that side events are back in person. I should just mention there is specific to the question of safety of journalists. There is a report of the Secretary General on safety of journalists and media workers with a special focus on the safety of women journalists online and offline. This report will be presented by the office on the 20th of September, FYI. Okay, we have another question from Laurent, if we can unmute Laurent. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. That's interesting because it was precisely a question on that return of the side events at the Palais. So in the discussion, the recent discussions that you had with the NGO representatives, could you feel that in a way they feel connected again to the body and trusted again as a stakeholder, whereas some of them were quite frustrated in the recent years by the framework?
Thank you. I said it the first time, we wouldn't have a Human Rights Council if it weren't for the NGOs of the world. So they are one of the most important stakeholders they drive our work. So yes, I had the feeling, in answering your question, I had the feeling that they feel more comfortable going back to not full normality, but side events, and they participate in informal consultations. Let's remember that is also important. This session, again, like June, we have rooms for informal consultations for the negotiation where NGOs participate freely, enter the room and participate in those informal consultations. And you know that Geneva in particular has a very good work close with NGOs here in the Palais on human rights. We are one of the leading cases of the whole UN system working ongoing work all year long with NGOs, which is not the case in all bodies. So for us, it's very important. And yes, I have the feeling that they are happier. But of course, it's never enough. The human rights agenda is so wide, so difficult, that we would like to have more and more participation. But the space constraints is not a minor thing. You have to understand, we don't have the old Palais at all. We only have this building, so many restrictions, but we are much better than when we started the year. Thank you.
Indeed. Okay, Gabby, you owe me a cup of coffee if I give you the third floor at the time of the floor here.
Well,
Gabby?
Well,
go ahead.
Be my guest. I can. Tequila. What about tequila?
Okay, sure.
Okay. No. Yeah, just a clarification that these side events are gonna be not only by states, but also NGOs will organize these side events. That's just a clarification. And secondly, and sorry that I took the microphone. If you can comment on the situation in your country, in Argentina, where Mrs. Kirchner has, we know about the the attack that she suffered and the polarization in your country. If you want to say something, I would appreciate it. And it's just a question because you are from Argentina and it's obvious to ask you this question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On the first part of the question, side events, yes, NGOs and states and institutions can organize side events of 1 hour. We will have one room dedicated to side events, but the time limit of 1 hour, one after the other. And on the second question, of course, as an Argentine, we always have our country as something that concerns us, but I have no comment today on this situation and this specific question, because I'm here with you as president of the Human Rights Council in a briefing before the session. That's my responsibility. And regarding what happened and the attempt against the vice president of Argentina, from the Secretary General of the UN and other officials have pronounced themselves publicly on that attempt. So I have no further comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Boris, one last question from Boris in the room. Go ahead.
Longest entries I see in this booklet that the most substantial entries are COVID, right to development, indigenous people, and racism. Of course, the length of the entry reflects the number of documents and not necessarily the importance, the rating of importance. Can you comment on that, though?
Sorry, comment on the length, on why those issues are not others? Sorry,
why this issue are the ones which, when browsing through the document, seem to be the most significant. Right to development was supposed to be the official program of the international community since 1945 or even since 1918, I think. The fight against racism is the official program of any democratic society since the proclamation of human rights in was it 92 or 89? I'm not sure, etc. So I am a bit surprised, but you might give me some better, more rational understanding of this order of importance.
Yes, first of all human rights issues are important. There's no priority, the same way that there's no priority of victims over another type of victims. If there are violations of human rights, they're all important. Of course, what you are referring is one systemic aspect, which is that each session has different issues that are related to mandates. And so it's not that a country can come and say, okay, this session I would like to just address an issue and prioritize an issue or not. It's the council collectively that decides that after mandates. But the ones you refer are cross-cutting issues that have an impact on human rights. And as you say, have a long history. A right to development have a long, since 1986, we are talking about right to development. And in Vienna conference in 93, we ratified the right to development. And now we have a working group working on a possible instrument on the right to development. So it is a cross-cutting issue with a lot of information, with a long history and many documents. And racism, needless to say, since 1969, we have a convention. It's at the basis of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have an ongoing different mechanisms addressing the issue of racism. And I just mentioned the last one after George Floyd that we created and is going to be presenting the first report is the law enforcement of law enforcement's forces and racism created with a special mechanism of experts.
As far as I know, the High Commission for Human Rights does not keep account of the number of policemen killed in action. I asked the question once, I was told no. I don't know if I misunderstood.
Well, as you say, it's a question for a High Commissioner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one last question from Emma Farge of Reuters, and then we'll have to call it a day. Go ahead, Emma.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry I missed the beginning, so please ignore my question if this has already been answered. So the first one was, is there anything formally which will address the Xinjiang report in this session? I couldn't see anything in the agenda, but perhaps you could just clarify whether there is anything in there and whether you expect it to come up. And secondly, Ambassador, since you are a candidate to be the next High Commissioner, could you comment on the process, where you're up to, if you're in the short list, and when we can expect a new High Commissioner to be appointed, please? Thanks very much.
Thank you, and I invite you to use the technology and go backwards in this same video, because those two questions were raised at the beginning of the conference. So, but thank you very much for asking them. Of course, I can tell you, I said, and I can repeat it, why not at the end, if we have time. Yeah. It's not a mandated report by the council, mandated by the council. There will, states have the opportunity of use any of the tools of the council to address this report, and there will be an oral update by the acting High Commissioner on 12th and 13th of September, and that she will address human rights situation all over the world, including this. That's it. And on the other one, I have no comment. It's a confidential process. I refrain from making comment, and it's the Secretary General's decision. Thank you.
I apologize, that was not the last question. We have one more question, and this is really the last one from Jamie Keaton of Associated Press. Go ahead, Jamie.
Thanks, Rolando. It just has to do with Emma's question. Madame Bachelet, in her report, called on the Human Rights Council to keep abreast of the situation of Xinjiang. How important is it for you as the president of the Human Rights Council that her wishes are respected and that the council actually continue to keep a close focus on the situation?
The answer is very similar to what I said before. I'm the president of a council of 47 members, and it's state-driven. They have the prerogative, each of the 47, to ask for the council to do whatever they deem necessary. And so it will be up to the states to decide how to follow up that report or any other report that is brought to the attention of the council in different formats. This situation, the object of this report has been addressed in different formats for several years in the council through joint statements of some countries and others. So it's up to the states to decide how to address this or any other report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you all for joining. We look forward to working with you over the next few weeks. Pascal, Matt, and myself are at your disposal. So thanks again. Thank you, Ambassador.